we specifically answer questions that relate to bilingualism and for, for children whose English isn't their first language. We would welcome calls as well. If anybody has any questions for Veronica, please do give us a call on the studio number on 01733 602 133, or you can send us a WhatsApp message on 07745 278 978. And as always, you can join us on Facebook Live and send us a message there. We've got a message that has just come in on Facebook Live. We're just going to pull it up now. Assalamu alaikum, Sephora and Muhadditha. Just wanted to say this is a brilliant topic. But someone who was brought up bilingual, I feel failing my children by not making an effort teaching them my mother tongue. I'd love for them to know Bangla and Arabic, but I feel I'm being lazy about it. This is very motivational to listen to, and that's from Shapla. Thank you very much, Shapla, for that. Veronica, we're going to go back into the interview with yourself. Now, I was looking at some of the blog posts that you've done on your page, and you talk a little bit about code mixing and code switching. Now, they sound like very, it sounds like a bit of jargon, but can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so what I was just mentioning before about children mixing languages when they're speaking, the technical term for that is code mixing and code switching.
Right.
So code mixing, well, I'll start with code switching. Code switching is when you will speak a sentence or a phrase from one language and then you'll do another phrase in another language. So it will be probably bigger chunks of speech that you're doing in each language. Whereas code mixing is when you are, say, speaking a phrase in English and then you just add a word of Italian into it. Mm-hmm. So it's just where you add one or two words from another language into the main language that you're using.
Okay. And what does it actually signify if children are doing this? Is it a good sign?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned before, when they're young, they don't understand the language as separate, so they're just doing that, because they don't understand. But as they get older, it's because of those reasons that I talked about, where, it could be on the tip of the tongue, or it's about their emotions, or about speaking in specific topics. But the thing about code mixing is quite interesting, because there are specific places within a sentence where code mixing will occur, and speakers of the languages will be able to do that, and they know the rules of the languages, and they know where switches can occur. They won't just switch in any old way, They will do it in specific places. For example, you wouldn't get a verb ending from Turkish, for example, and stick it on an English verb,
Right.
You'd have to have that whole verb phrase in English or in Turkish. You can't mix them up.
So it's very cleverly...
And bilinguals are able to do this without really realising that they're doing it.
So it's very cleverly done. Children know in their heads what they're doing when they're actually switching from language to language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're a lot more clever than you think.
Yeah.
Veronica, can I just ask you, as parents who are trying to encourage our children to be bilingual, especially from a young age, should we code switch? I mean, sometimes when I've got a 2-year-old, when I'm trying to tell him a phrase, like this is a door, something simple, I tend to say it in both languages. I'll say, this is a door, هذا باب in Arabic. And I do that with a lot of things. And I'm worried that I don't want to sound like I'm correcting him. So, for example, if he comes up to me and says, this is a door, I'll say, yes, this is a door, هذا باب. Is that a correct approach to say things in both languages if we're trying to encourage bilingualism?
What I would say is stick to the language you're best in. I would always say that speak to your child in your native tongue, if that is the language you're best in. I know some people, they learn it as a child and then they don't really know it as an adult. So therefore their native language is not their best language anymore. But the language that you are best in, most fluent in, that is the language you should be speaking to your child. If you're fluent in 2 languages, then obviously you have the opportunity to choose which language you want to speak to them. Now, when we learn languages, what we have to do is we have to realize that a word symbolizes something, and we don't really want to be translated. You don't really want to be picking up a book and thinking book, kitab, for example. You want to just be able to pick up the book and think of the word immediately. So we don't really need to be saying the phrase to them in both languages, because that is actually going to make it a bit slower for them, because they may be trying to translate and translation is not the quickest way, if you know what I mean. So what you should do is you should just be able to, if you want to teach them Arabic, then just start speaking Arabic to them. Just start saying, this is a book, this is a door, whatever, in Arabic. You don't need to bring the English into it at all.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Veronica, just moving on slightly, how does a stutter affect bilingual children? I mean, does it affect them differently to those who only speak one language, perhaps?
No, not at all. I mean, there is no research at the moment which claims that bilingualism does cause problems in stuttering. I mean, a lot of children between the ages of 2 and 5 do stutter. I mean, I think it's about 5% of children will have a stammer between the ages of 2 and 5, and those are the age, that's really quite crucial for language development. And we often find that the children with the stutter have a slightly more advanced language skills, and it's because, they've got too much information in their head, and they can't get it all out. They're stumbling over it. So, it's quite a natural thing, and 75% of children actually grow out of a stammer on their own without the need for any help. So if your child does have a stammer between the age of 2 and 5, I would say it's not really something to worry about yet. But if it does persist after the age of 5, and then we call it a persistent stammer, then it is something that you may be a bit worried about, and you can go and get speech and language therapy for. But as I said, stuttering is not made worse by bilingualism. I mean, you may notice, actually, which is quite interesting, that the stammer may be worse in one language rather than the other. And that is normally the language that they have better linguistic skills in.
Right. That's interesting, isn't it? Because you'd think that they'd be stuttering or stammering in the language that they were less confident in. Yeah,
it's quite interesting, But no, it's a sign of good linguistic skills.
A sign of lots going on in the head, maybe, and like she said, there's more to come out. So
they just can't get it out. Yeah. Okay, and obviously, Veronica, one of your specialism subjects is autism. Is it harder for children on the autism spectrum to learn and use languages?
Well, as you know, autism is a very, very wide spectrum. So on one end, you have children who are non-verbal. They don't know any language at all. And then on the other end, you have highly functioning children and adults, and they are able to have the same level of linguistic skills as us, but there are difficulties with a few of those linguistic skills. Now, so you wouldn't expect the non-verbal ones, obviously, to learn 2 languages because they're not even going to be able to learn 1 language. But the higher functioning children, there's absolutely no reason why they cannot learn more than 1 language. And during my research, I was actually working with a lot of bilingual children with autism. So I've worked with a lot, and I know there's not a problem. Now, what my research was about was looking at whether bilingualism may be helpful, actually, for children with autism.
Right.
Because, as we know, I think your speaker mentioned this a bit in the first half of the show. There's a lot of cognitive benefits associated with bilingualism. And these kind of benefits are things like increased flexibility, increased attention, and those kind of things are things that autistic children actually have difficulties with.
Right.
If, as you may know, they like set routines, and they're not that flexible to make changes and things, and they may not have very good attention skills. So at the moment, the research that's going on is looking at whether those benefits from bilingualism will actually help children with autism, because it will mean that if they are bilingual, they will have better attention and better flexibility skills.
Okay. So there's no reason really for parents to think, right, because my child is on the autism spectrum, I'm going to try less harder to teach them X, Y, Z languages. I think you should carry on as normal as you would have done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If they are on the higher functioning end, then it's absolutely fine, But as I was saying, if they're on the low functioning end, they may not be acquiring, 1 language, and you may end up doing Makaton with them, or, some kind of signing with them, or being able, try to communicate with them in other ways. But what I would say about that is I've worked very closely with a lady called Nora Abbey, and she actually has a son who I think is 20 years old now, and he's got quite low functioning autism. And she actually told me that when he was growing up, she thought she just had to speak English to him because she wanted him to learn a language. And he took a long time to learn any words in English. And she didn't speak Somalian to him, which is her native tongue.
Right.
And she realized later on, when he was much older, that he really, really enjoyed it when she spoke her native tongue to him. And it was, she realized that he loved just to be cuddled and to listen to her speaking Somalian to him. And she really regrets now that she couldn't do that because she didn't realize that, it wasn't a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
So
for
I
him
would
it was
say
almost a comfort thing.
that's right. So I would say it's quite difficult. You have to judge it on, each specific case. But yeah, just try a few things out and see how it goes and see what you're comfortable with and see what your child enjoys.
Yeah. Okay, that's all very interesting. There's a lot we need to read up on when it comes to language and bilingualism. Yeah, we're very lucky to be joined by you today. Actually, yeah, it is. It sounds like a very, very broad topic. What sort of advice and tips can you give to parents out there who are trying to teach their children several languages at a time?
What I would say is start from birth. It is never too young, but it does become increasingly difficult as they get older. So that we know that before the age of 6...
What's too old?
Well, after the age of about 12, 13, when children hit puberty, that is the age where it gets really quite difficult after that.
Right.
So I would say, but I mean, it's not impossible because adults do learn languages, but they never really reach native-like proficiency, whereas before the age of 6, they are highly likely to be able to acquire 2 or 3 languages to native-like proficiency in all of the languages.
Yeah.
Okay. So if your child is below the age of 6, then just start speaking your native language to them immediately. You don't need to wait, and they don't need to be even understanding it. You just need to start speaking it, because if you think about how you learned your first language, it was just through listening, through social interaction. So just start speaking it. Don't worry about them not understanding, because as they hear it more, they will understand more and more and more, and then suddenly they'll start speaking it.
Yeah.
You may notice a few difficulties, such as they may not actually like it if you start changing and switching to another language. We do find that quite often with younger children. They're used to you speaking to them in one language, and they might feel quite upset if you change that. So I would say just speak to them and say, look, from now on, I'm going to speak this language to you. It's my own language. I feel it's important, for you to be able to communicate with your relatives and things like that, and, access more of the culture.
Yeah.
So I want to do it, and let's try it and see how it goes, and then just start speaking.
Excellent. Lots of very good advice there from both of our experts today. Thanks very much for joining us. Veronica, you write a blog. Do you want to quickly tell our listeners a little bit about your blog and how they can follow it?
Yeah, so my blog is called Multicultural Motherhood, so you can access it at www.multiculturalmotherhood.com, and I write all about how to raise a multicultural and multilingual child. Also, as a homeschooling family, I do write a lot about homeschooling as well, giving tips about how to do it, and also lots of kind of activities and things that you can do with your children, right from preschool, toddler age, up until my eldest is 8, so from about preschool up until the age of 8, you can find lots of different activities and crafts and things to do. But I also have a YouTube channel where I do videos about giving advice about homeschooling and bilingualism, and I have done a couple of Facebook Lives on my page as well, answering questions from my followers. So if you want to ask me any questions, then you can just go on my Facebook page and comment on some of my posts or send me a message. And the other thing is Instagram.
Brilliant.
I'm on Instagram at Multicultural Motherhood, and you can also send me a DM on there if you've got any further questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for today, Veronica. Just before we go, just very quickly, we're going to share an event, a Quran recitation event that we have on Saturday, the 27th of January. Salaam Radio have put this event on with world-renowned reciter Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Shadri, and that's at Gladstone Park Community Centre at 5 o'clock on the 27th. Tickets are only £5, so do contact Salaam Radio for tickets. It will be a great event. Thank you very much to both of our experts today, and thank you to the listeners for joining in. And do listen to us again next week at Parenting Matters on Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to Salaam Radio, and it's now time for Asr Azan.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة